Good afternoon and welcome to the Respectability webinar for October 5th, 2016. How's everybody doing? Well, first of all, I want to wish everyone a happy National Disability Employment Awareness Month. This day and this month we get to celebrate inclusion in the workplace, jobs for people with disabilities. We get to share using the hashtag InclusionWorks, brought to you by the folks over at the Office of Disability Employment Policy. This day we get to mark the fact that people with disabilities want jobs, they want to be empowered, they want careers, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. There is, a profound need in our country for best practices that will support and expand jobs to empower more people with disabilities to be able to pursue the American dream. And so I'm very pleased to be with you today. We're going to be talking about Montgomery County, Maryland, and the successes they've been able to achieve in terms of jobs for people with disabilities. First and foremost, I want to thank our partner, JPMorgan Chase and Company. Bring us these webinars. They have been supporting our webinar program this year. They've been a phenomenal partner. They allow us to provide free webinars with closed captioning to our nationwide audience. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Chase, for organizing this. And so today I have the pleasure of presenting about Montgomery County, Maryland. I am joined by Trish Galley of the Commission for People with Disabilities in Montgomery County, as well as Karen Hochberg, who is an HR specialist and guru over at Montgomery County government. They're going to be talking through kind of really the local partnerships, lessons, pathways that have been opened for Marylanders with disabilities. And for those of you who aren't in Maryland, I think there's some great lessons to be learned, some knowledge to be shared, and I think we're going to be learning a lot today. So I'm going to turn it over to you two now.
Thank you, Philip. Let me run through our agenda real quick. We'll be reviewing our introductions, talk about the Commission on People with Disabilities, the history of advocacy, overcoming challenges that we faced with bringing in some of the programs, how change has begun. We'll talk about our special hiring authority success, and then Karen will talk about county people with the People with Disabilities Employment Initiatives, and finally the outcomes that we've had. My name is Trish Galley. I am a commissioner on the Commission for People with Disabilities in Montgomery County government. I have recently rejoined the Commission. I was previously on the Commission as chair of the Commission, so I'll be speaking about my experiences there. I also am a federal government employee with a background in project management, and I am a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt as well, so around process improvement. Karen?
Good afternoon, everybody. I work for Montgomery County government in the Office of Human Resources. I've been part of Montgomery County government since 2000, having worked as the county's disability program manager, an HR specialist, and now in my current role as the targeted recruitment job specialist, where I oversee the county's hiring initiatives for people with disabilities and for our veterans. I'm a senior HR professional, and really I'm excited to be able to share the programs that Montgomery County has with everybody who's listening.
Thank you, Karen. So let me talk a little bit about the Commission on People with Disabilities. The role of the Commission is to advise the county government on the coordination and development of policies for people with disabilities. But our role really covers a broad range of activities. We look at everything from housing to employment to helping people with development disabilities, architectural barriers, you name it, whatever the county needs, they come to us and we advise them. Our commission is comprised of 26 people who have a disability, parents who have a child with a disability, and individuals who work for nonprofit organizations. So we really have a well-rounded perspective when we sit around the room and talk about all of the issues. There are three types of barriers that we face as disabled people. Attitudinal barriers, meaning the inability of non-disabled people to really see past the impairment. That goes to discrimination, fear, bullying sometimes, and low expectations of the individual as a person with a disability. The next is environmental barriers, primarily inaccessible, whether they be physical, ramps, or communications, wide variety of environmental barriers. And then the institutional barriers, where there are actually laws and policies, strategies or practices that actually discriminate. So that's really overcoming those three main barriers is what our commission is all about. Next slide, please. So I wanted to highlight for a moment some of the civil rights issues and laws that have come up over the years to really paint the picture of where we've been with this issue of employment and how these all come pulled together. So the first civil rights law guaranteeing equal opportunities for persons with disabilities was the Rehabilitation Law of 1973. And that was within the federal government, prohibiting discrimination with federal programs as well and services to those receiving federal funds. That also included architectural barriers as well. The next Education for All Handicapped Children Act, yes, that's the name of it back then, back in 1975, was really a landmark that affected my life personally, because what it meant was that people with disabilities would have the opportunity to be mainstreamed into a regular classroom with non-disabled people. I was the first person to be mainstreamed in Montgomery County through this law that was put into place. And it really meant that I was actually considered to be in special education up until this time. So it's hard to imagine that now today, that we wouldn't even test somebody with a disability. We would just throw them into special education, which meant I was segregated out of the regular population of students and taught with special education. My mother fought that, kept me in private school until the law came around, so we won't get into how old I am. But certainly this was an opportunity first to start getting children out into the non-disabled population, because that's the way we overcome discrimination, is to be working alongside and learning alongside non-disabled people who can see that we are more than capable of just who we are, to see beyond our wheelchairs, beyond our communication barriers, whatever it is, to be able to overcome that. And that's why that law was so important. So they changed the law back in the 90s, thank goodness, to move disabled people not just at segregated schools that had accessibility, but to actually mainstream into every school. So now you had disabled people in every school, which was huge. And obviously that, again, now as I grew older, those people who I was in high school with are now employers, right? Their mindset has been shifted and changed to see, well, I remember that person in my English class or my math class, and she did fine. Why couldn't I hire her? And that's why this is really important. So I wanted to highlight these laws. And obviously ADA was huge in terms of changing all of our lives to really open up, to take down so many barriers and to improve life for disabled people. And the changes that they made recently in 2008. One of the things that I always find interesting about the ADA as a civil rights law, one of the things that was a major change, and they said, well, how did ADA really change from before to now? If you, back in the 90s, if you were an amputee and you had a prosthesis, you were no longer considered disabled. It seems insane, doesn't it? But that was the truth. And so in 2008, the law changed to say, yes, you can be considered disabled, even if you have your prostheses or your medication or any of those things. So this law, the changes made a significant difference in for disabled people in terms of how reasonable accommodations and all of these things to really help increase employment and to have those protections in place. So civil rights laws are very critical, and we have to remember they're rights of commerce, right? So I have the right to be able to go to a grocery store, to have employment, and to be a contributing member of society. And so that's really important. I suppose I didn't mention that I'm in a wheelchair and I have a service dog. And so that's really important for those people who can't see me to know that. Next slide, please. So in the early 90s, just when ADA had been passed, the Commission took on the work to advocate and advise to put in place a non-competitive hiring for people with disabilities. And that was modeled after Schedule A, which had happened back in 1979 in the federal government. So the federal government put in place a non-competitive hiring, which really meant that if you were qualified for the job and you were a good fit for the job, they didn't have to interview anybody else. They could hire you on the spot and bring you in. They could also have the opportunity to create a job for you if they felt there was an opportunity for you and to bring you in that way. So that really was something that the Commission looked at, and we recognized Kermit Moe, who sadly did not live to see this happen in Montgomery County, but certainly laid the groundwork. But what the Commission found out at the time was in order to put this special hiring authority in place, because of the employment laws and statutes and merit system that they had within the county, that it would require an amendment to the county charter. And that meant a very big uphill battle. So the last bullet on my slide says, we quickly learned that getting an amendment was going to be a tremendous challenge, and it took over 20 years to make it happen. And so the bottom line and the advice for those individuals who are pushing for these things to happen, whether you're in an HR group or you're in a commission or you're a disabled person, is to not give up and to be persistent, because government takes a long time to change. But when it does, it's definitely well worth the advocacy and the advice that you can give along the way. Next slide, please. So by being strong advocates and providing advice, the Commission was able to overcome many challenges. We were continuing to keep employment for people with disabilities as a goal within the Commission. Now, this was very unusual, as I found out when I was chairman, because many of the commissions in Montgomery County every year set brand new goals, and they basically obliterate the previous year. But we've kept this as an ongoing goal for over 20 years, which really speaks to the commitment that that the county, as well as the commissioners, had to this issue. We met with many county council members, other commissions within the county to get them behind us and to help us, most recently the veterans, and the Office of Human Resources, and the County Charter Commission, to work towards breaking down barriers. One of the meetings that I had with the county charter was very distressing to me when we first were talking about this issue, because the person said to me, "I wouldn't have a problem hiring you, Trish." And that just really sort of cuts you, right? And how do you sit there and I took a deep breath and remembered I had to be a business professional and said, well, that's exactly what we're here to talk about. Is to, it's not about hiring people into the mailroom. It's about hiring people at all levels of the county. With the Education Acts, as I talked about before, that opened doors to more education and higher education for persons with disabilities. So we had to stop thinking about the fact that people with disabilities worked only in the mailroom or in lower level jobs, that we had attorneys and we had people with project management experience and other experiences that could come in and do the job. And so these were the challenges that we had to overcome, was really changing a mindset that people had. And that, to me, is the biggest challenge and the biggest barrier that we face, because we can build a ramp, but we can't always convince people that they should have a ramp, right? And so we've been partnering with the Commission on Veterans Affairs, working and living in an area where we have a lot of veterans returning from the various wars and are at Walter Reed and assimilating back into society. Certainly, we have the opportunity, and we have many veterans who actually are employed in this area who would be also somewhat understanding and sympathetic to the issues around persons who had fought wars and come back now with a disability. And so to be able to open those doors to those individuals, I see that in my own agency. 20% of our population are veterans, and certainly they get it. They get those issues. And then the challenges, of course, with somebody who's now facing a disability as well. So we've been able to partner with them and have great success. Next slide, please. So change began when people with disabilities were successfully working alongside other employees. But change doesn't happen again until we change laws and work to bring disabled people in. One day, we won't have to have diversity laws at all, right? We won't have to worry about counting the numbers and working that extra effort, because we will simply just hire people based on their qualifications and look beyond who they are, their skin color, their race, their religion, and their disability. But until that time, we have to have programs in place to be able to bring people in. So one of the first steps was to establish several intern programs in Montgomery County, and we're going to highlight the ins and outs of that program a little bit later. I don't want to steal Karen's thunder with that, but certainly bringing in some intern programs where we could get people with disability, again, working alongside of folks with non-disabled people. And we also partnered with the Office of Human Resources to create a hiring preference for people with disabilities and veterans. And so there's some very technical reasons to do that, but certainly this was a way also to bring people in. If there were a pool of people, there might be a hiring preference to rate that person so that we could hire that individual. And Karen, again, will get into the ins and outs in case I made any mistakes with that. But that happened back in 2010. But we didn't stop there, because we said, well, wait a minute, we still want that Schedule A hiring. And so, fortunately, at that time, we had one of the EEO lawyers from the federal government on our commission who actually was a parent of a person with a disability. And so we were very fortunate to have him help to really inform the county about what this was all about, what the special hiring authority was going to mean to the county. But we still face the barriers with the attitudinal changes. Why do we really need this? Isn't the hiring preference enough? So we were fighting against our own advocacy, and so the Special Hiring Authority was supported by one of our council members. In 2012, Phil Andrews came to us and said, we really want to support this bill to amend the county charter and to allow for non-competitive hiring for qualified persons with severe disabilities. And this also means that in this particular hiring authority, we do have veterans included in that, but we require them to go through the Disability Rehabilitation Office to be qualified, because the veterans' qualification is a lot less severe. And so we wanted this program to really meet the federal standards. And so we put that in place as part of this. So we were excited to be part of the presidential election, to have our question A on the ballot. And as you see on the slide here, we have our little button there, ready, willing, and able, vote for question A. So we're ready, willing, and able to work. And this got on the ballot. And so the commission focused our efforts. We had really a short time to pull this off. So we focused our efforts on testimony to the county council from a variety of sources, We called everybody we knew to say, come and testify that day. We actually had very little negative testimony, very, very little, if any. We participated in many, many interviews. I can't even remember how many I attended myself. And then we certainly promoted the campaign all around wherever we could. I'm very proud to say that the county voters overwhelmingly supported the Special Hiring Authority by casting 80% of their votes for yes for question A. And as we know, that was a very well attended presidential election. Those are always the best elections to be a part of. And the fact that 80% of the county said yes to this was very exciting to the commission. And it really meant that we could really do some exciting things. And we hope now our next goal on this is to take it out more to the private sector and to say, here's how it's working at the Montgomery County government. And that's our goals for the future of this hiring authority, is to show people how well it works. So I'm going to turn it over now to the expert, Karen Hochberg, to talk about the county training and employment opportunities in depth.
Thank you, Trish. So Trish's last slide was talking about the change in 2012 with the passing of our Special Hiring Authority success. And the county was really thinking about employment prior to that with the 2007 Customized Employment Public Intern Project. And I'm just on this slide, which talks about our employment opportunities, I'm just going to quickly talk about them and then talk in depth after I do a quick summary. So the Customized Employment Public Intern Project was really based on the knowledge that people with severe disabilities don't necessarily have the same access to government positions as people who do not have disabilities. And so what it did was allow for the creation of temporary work assignments that allowed for a lot of flexibility in the workplace. And that internship program, which started in 2007, continues today. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about that in a few minutes. Project Search is an international internship program for people with developmental disabilities and or intellectual disabilities. And in 2012, our county executive saw this program being held at NIH and came back and said, I want to have that program here in the county. And in very short order, we were able to begin as a host business for Project Search. And again, I'm going to provide a little bit more detail on that. Our hiring preference policies, which have to do with people with disabilities and veterans, both with and without disabilities, came into effect in 2010, and we have continued to work on that to fine-tune it and look at ways to improve it. And just this past year, revamped one aspect of veterans hiring preference, and that is for public safety uniform positions, where we've moved into a points process. And then in 2013, the Office of Human Resources, in really demonstrating their commitment to these hiring initiatives, decided to turn one of the HR positions into a dedicated position to have oversight over all of these hiring initiatives. And that was a position that I moved into in 2013. And then in 2014, in the Office of Human Resources, to support the non-competitive hiring process, created a database. We use the acronym HIRED, which actually stands for the Hiring Initiative Registration for Employment Database. We thought we were quite clever with HIRED. In 2014, to really allow for people to provide us with their resumes and allow us to be more strategic in looking at non-competitive hires. So if you want to advance the slide, we can talk in more detail about the Customized Employment Public Intern Project. We have had this program since 2007, and currently we have about 20 interns that work up to 18 hours per week for a maximum of 2 years. The people who are participants in our public intern project are paid. They are considered temporary employees. They are currently earning $10.75 an hour. And as each year, as the county provides a general wage adjustment, or a COLA, if you're more familiar with that term, get salary increases along with the same increase that everybody else gets. These are temporary positions where they do not have benefits, nor do they accrue sick or vacation time. However, they are able to transition if there are funds available and positions are able to be created. They're able to transition seamlessly via our non-competitive hiring process into a paid position. In order to be eligible for the public intern program, there needs to be proof of disability, minimum age of 18, and then they're registered with an agency called WorkSource Montgomery. Somebody from WorkSource Montgomery is the one who oversees that particular program from the outside and works with the job coaches from a variety of different agencies. The goal of this is to match individuals with significant disabilities to work tasks that are based on departmental needs, interest, skills, and competencies. One of the things that Trish mentioned, which is a little bit of a shortcoming in all of our programs, is the whole goal was to have positions at all levels within county government. And I don't think that that has actually come to fruition. Most of these positions are still relatively entry level. We work very hard to try to expand that into more challenging and more advanced skill sets. But one of the unique things about Montgomery County government is we are a unionized government, and we have to be very careful about how work is done and performed, because we cannot take work away from a union employee. So it gets a little complicated and nuanced in trying to identify tasks, support our interns, provide opportunity for growth and advancement, and still stay within the parameters of our own collective bargaining laws. If you want to advance the slide. So that's the customized employment intern program. Project Search Montgomery is another internship program, although we really consider it more of an employability training program than an internship program. The participants in Project Search Montgomery do not get paid. As I said earlier, they all are individuals who have either an intellectual or a developmental disability. They can have other types of disabilities in addition, but they must have those two disabilities to be eligible to participate. While the model for Project Search is for transitioning youth out of high school, we have found that having an older group of interns lends itself to more success within the county. Our participants have a little bit more maturity. They've had an opportunity to either volunteer or generate some other work experience, whether it's paid or unpaid. And we just find that we've had more success with independent work within the county by having a little bit of an older population participate. And when I say older, I'm still talking anywhere from probably 21 to maybe early 30s. The program model for Project Search allows for a full immersion in the workplace, working about 25 hours a week, but there is also a classroom component where participants have we have a instructor who works on both hard and soft skills of employment. For those of you who are in the workplace, find, just like we do, that the soft skills, whether it's a person with a disability or not, are the key to success. And so we have found that having an instructor who can really focus on the soft skills and really work on advocacy and setting boundaries and appropriate workplace behaviors has really led to the type of success that we've had with the Project Search Montgomery. The program model has partnerships between not only the county is considered the host business. We are the ones that provide the internship sites. but other partners include Ivy Mount School, which is a private school within Montgomery County. We have community partners, including the DDA and Department of Rehabilitation Services. Funding comes from DDA as well as DOORS, and then our community partner is SEEK, who provides us with the job coaches. The structure of Project Search is participants can participate in up to 3 10-week rotations. They can stay in a site for more than 1 rotation, but our parameters for having that to occur has to do with the ability to layer on additional tasks. The whole goal of the program is employability and the development of work skills. And if we have an intern that is staying in one site but not having an opportunity to grow and learn new skills, we don't feel that that's to the best advantage of the participant, and so we actually will not allow that to happen. We have 12 interns, we have 3 job coaches, so there's a lot of support within the workplace of identifying adaptations. Our job coaches also can develop a relationship with the supervisors, which also lend themselves to understanding the job and really being able to figure out ways to lay on additional tasks. One of the things that we found very early on with Project Search Montgomery, and it has crossed over into the Customized Employment Public Intern Project, but more so with the Project Search, is that we were going to reach saturation in a very short amount of time. And when I say saturation, as our departments realize that there is real work being done and meaningful work being done, and they figured out, hey, I need to figure out how to bring somebody on, we only have so many positions where we can create positions for that type of work. And so success also leads to losing those sites. So as we've had people get hired, we've then lost our internship site. So we realized in order to maintain sustainability of this program, we would have to venture out and seek partnerships within the community. And so through our own outreach, we've partnered with a local government within Montgomery County, the city of Rockville, the city of Gaithersburg, our local community college, Montgomery College, our state's attorney's office, Montgomery Parks, et cetera, all as additional agencies that can see all of the benefits of having a program like this. And so what that has led us to do is to really focus on both the Public Intern Project and Montgomery and Project Search Montgomery as almost like we are a training program, and that we can provide people with learning certain skills and developing appropriate workplace behaviors, and then trying to almost be a pipeline into the private sector. And so we're really trying to work with the private sector and saying, we can be your training ground for these types of positions, but then your commitment is that you have to hire, that the county cannot be the only organization that is creating positions for people with disabilities. So that's our goal, and we continue to work towards that goal. Do you want to advance the slide?
Yep.
The next thing that I want to talk about is our hiring preference. And you'll see that there's some overlap between how our policy works for hiring preference for both people with disabilities and for veterans. And again, veterans with disabilities, and then veterans in our non-public safety positions. So for people with disabilities, the way our hiring preference works is you have to be rated as we go through our selection process. You have to be rated and placed in the highest rated category for that particular job, and then placed on our eligible list. If it's a person with a disability, our documentation is through the Department of Rehabilitation Services. If you're not in Maryland, it's a like agency in a similar state, and then it can only be used for the first-time appointment into a merit position, meaning for temporary positions, we do not use hiring preference. So in order, again,
It's a permanent position.
it has to be a permanent, we call our merit positions, we call our permanent positions merit positions. The same thing for veterans, again, Phil, if you want to advance. It's, again, the same criteria, first-time appointment into a permanent position, highest rated category. The discharge from the military must be an honorable discharge, and if it's a veteran with a disability, the veterans have to have received at least a 30% disability rating or higher from the Veterans Administration. And we require proof of that before we will advance somebody through the process of the interview process. We don't ask for it up front. We wait until we know what category someone is in. And then if you want to advance, and I'm just going to go one more and talk about our public safety positions and then talk about the application of these 3 veterans policies. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, that's my bad. So one of the things that we have to consider when we're using our hiring preference, whether it's for people with disabilities, our veterans, or our veterans with disabilities, is that this policy is not a guarantee of employment, and it does not guarantee that that person will even be selected. What our policy does say, however, is that a person with a disability, a veteran or a veteran with a disability, has to be considered first, meaning they have to be interviewed without having any influence of any other interviews. So hiring managers have to conduct their interviews, make a decision if they want to move forward, or if they don't want to move forward because they think the person really is not qualified to do the job, they have to request a bypass that goes to the Office of Human Resources Director. So it has to be based on a work-related criteria to bypass an eligible vet or a person with a disability. And once that bypass is reviewed, and if it's accepted, then the hiring manager can move forward with interviewing other candidates on the eligible list. Now let's move on and talk about the preference points for public safety positions. And really this has nothing to do with the disabled community. This is strictly for uniform public safety positions, in that we realized that the way we were applying our the way we were applying our preference program was not working in the same manner as it should for police officers, firefighters, and correctional officers. And this is now mirrored a little bit like the federal government, where veterans can receive points. And depending on how the hiring process is being conducted, whether there is an interview process or just a test, veterans can receive either 5 points, or if it's a vet with a disability, 10 additional points, and then we just start from high score on down in making job offers. There's no bypass, there's no nothing on this particular case because it's strictly based on points. And now I want to get back to some of the other policies which have to do with our non-competitive hiring process, because this is the key. So this is the 2 that I want to spend what remaining time I have to talk about the non-competitive hiring process. Our non-competitive hiring process allows the non-competitive appointment of qualified candidates into a merit position. The documentation that we require, again, is DOORS certification or from a like agency. And the thing about our non-competitive hiring process is it can occur at any point in the recruitment process. It can occur before we advertise for a position. It can occur after a job has been posted. It can occur before any interviews have been done, and it can occur even after interviews have been completed, but before an offer has been made. Our candidates have to meet the minimum qualifications of the job. They have to be able to perform the essential functions, either with or without an accommodation. And For positions that require a background check, they have to go through the same background check and the same physical examination as anyone else. The other area on the non-competitive hiring process, it does allow for the seamless transition of both our customized public intern participants and our our Project Search Montgomery participants when a job has been created for them. And that's probably where we've had the most success, is in the seamless transition of these participants. In 2014, I talked about the database that we created, and that allows for people with disabilities. Sorry, Phil. Thank you. This allows for people with disabilities to upload their resume. It allows me, I go through and review every resume I get and match them with job classes. And then as jobs become available, I present the resumes to hiring managers to really promote the non-competitive hiring of people with disabilities. Can we advance? I just want to talk talk on the challenges. So Trish also talked about the challenges of the Schedule A, and I'm going to say in the county we also have very similar challenges. One of our challenges with the non-competitive hiring database is people submit generic resumes. And as people know, hiring managers want to hire the most qualified. And the generic resume does not allow for people to address KSAs. It does not allow for very specialized program managers, program specialist positions.
What's KSA?
Knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Okay.
And I think that becomes a real challenge for hiring managers to be open-minded and want to take the time and interview somebody without having them go through a formal rating process. And so my challenge in my role is to really advocate for the hiring of people with disabilities. It's to really push through the bias that some of our hiring managers have when they can't see somebody who has addressed all the preferred criteria. And it's required a lot of workarounds to get our hiring managers to have a more open mind and to see that everybody has the right to work and everybody has should have the opportunity to demonstrate the skills that they have. So we're still pushing forward on trying to tweak and revise and update our hire database to have it be more inclusive, but it definitely still has its challenges. And then the last thing that I want to talk about, because I know I'm out of time, thank you, Trish, is just talk about outcomes, because you can't have a program if you don't talk about outcomes. And one of the things that I will say, in spite of some of our challenges, is that we continue to have, our outcomes continue to move in the right direction. As of this past week, when I did a report, we have hired, through hiring preference, a total of 222 people, 181 veterans, 12 veterans with disabilities, and 29 people with disabilities. Non-competitive appointments, we've had 21. And if you're looking at the slide, you can see the majority of our non-competitive appointments are through this seamless transition. This outcome does not tell you the true picture, though, of what the results are of employment for both Project Search Montgomery and the public internship program. We don't have the data for people who have been placed outside. Anecdotally, I know with Project Search, we've had about 67% placement, both inside and outside the county, since 2012. Again, I don't have the same data for the public intern program, but I'm certain it's much higher than the 4 that we show in our records. So hopefully there'll be questions that you have for both Trish and myself, and thank you for allowing us to talk about our program in Montgomery County.
So one of the challenges is limited hiring, period, too, right? So we've been through the recession, and so that was one of the other barriers we faced of saying, well, you know, now's not the time because we're not really hiring that many people right now. Well, that's the time to the HR people aren't that busy. Let them work on building a program, right? And so that was sort of our mindset. And so it does take time to build the program, and it does take time to get to the right place where, you know, budgets aren't being cut and all of those types of things. So it's a challenge fiscally as well.
From the fiscal standpoint, it's very challenging. Not only do you have limited budgets, but the county has had reduction in forces.
Right.
And for the last 5 years, you know, where the goal was not to
these numbers are pretty good.
We're proud of our numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be better, and it's a constant striving of take a chance, let's look at this, let's try this.
Mm-hmm.
We are proud of our numbers, and we still have a ways to go, not only in hiring more, but hiring at other levels within the county. I think that's the next big push.
Yep.
Well, this has been a very eye-opening and very informative presentation so far. We've had a little bit of a history lesson, a little bit of a tutorial, you know, some great advice for people who are on the human resources side of things about how you would structure these things and how this process works. Now we've got some time for questions. I know I'm burning up with questions for our lovely presenters. I'm Michelle, who is our operator. Can you please explain to folks on the phone how they can ask a question?
Sure. If you have called in, you can queue up to ask your verbal question by pressing 7 followed by the hash key or the pound sign on your phone now. Again, that's 7 pound to queue up for verbal questions. Otherwise, submit them via the chat.
Well, first, while people are queuing up, I'm curious. So obviously, Montgomery County is very lucky to be located next to the District of Columbia, and you know we have some great connections to the federal government in terms of the National Institutes for Health. We've got Walter Reed, Bethesda. So I'm curious, with that, what work has there been any looking forward to the issue of Section 503 of the Rehabilitation Act and any outreach to the federal contractor community from the commission, or if you feel that there are opportunities for perhaps the folks that go through the training process to then go find those jobs out there in the private sector and beyond just state government. So, any thoughts, either of you?
I know that that's an issue that the commission is talking about. I think we were talking about that as we're looking at our goals this year, is what are our opportunities to push for those issues, and what does Karen's thoughts on that?
Well, we also feel like that's our next avenue of partnership, is to work with our contractors and work with our departments that really host who support the number of contracts, is to figure out how do we work with you and have them also have to meet the same guidelines of having a percentage, I believe it's 7% of their. If they want to continue to have contracts within Montgomery County government, then they need to employ the same number of people. So that's our next step, is to reach out to the contractors.
Great. Operator, do we have any phone questions?
No audio questions on queue.
Okay. I'm curious, Karen, going back to talking about the public safety position and looking at hiring preference for veterans and veterans with disabilities. In that process, do you wait, perhaps, if someone was, do you consider at all the military occupational specialty of that veteran? Is that part of the process at all, or no?
No, it's not. It's simply our entry-level process for whether it's police, fire, or correctional officers is a test. They go through a written test, they go through an interview, and it's an application of points. So we have, I don't need to elaborate, so no.
Okay.
It's not anything to do with the classification.
Did you have something to add, Trish? Okay. I think it's interesting that you're talking about just being very careful with the project search model and making sure you don't just kind of drown out the employers. I know from having visited project search sites in Florida that they've had some great partnerships with some of the big hospitality chains there. And they've done such a good job of training folks through Project Search and then getting them placed in local hotels. They've had to start looking further and further afield for employers to both host the sites, but more importantly, to hire the interns post-project. So I'm curious, are there other avenues you're thinking in terms of employer outreach or engagement Are there other companies that you're looking at to possibly build up project search sites or find other ways or other avenues to get people placed and hired?
Well, one of our partners is through SEEK. They're our community rehab provider, and they're actually the community rehab provider for not only the Montgomery County site, but also the NIH site and the Smithsonian site. And they've partnered with DC Public Schools, and Hilton Hotels is their business. And so they've already taken it into that direction. In terms of employers who want to be a host business, that would not be part of the Montgomery County site. That would be something that if an employer wanted to have a project search, buy into a project search model, that they would have to work with. I can coordinate and steer them in the right direction, but we're only one arm of the partnership.
Gotcha. Operator, any phone questions?
No phone questions.
All right, well, I'll just keep bringing away with my question. So, Trish, in particular, I want to turn to you for a second.
Okay.
In talking about your work and experience with the Commission. I'm reminded of something that Kathy Greenlee, who recently retired from Health and Human Services and the Administration of Community Living, always talks about, that we need advocates both in the private sector and the nonprofit sector, but we also need people to advocate within government. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you work. You're involved in the federal bureaucracy.
Right.
You've been involved with this commission, which has had such a great focus on employment. So I'm curious, how did you first get involved with the commission? You said that you had been the chair of the commission
Yes.
for a time.
Yes.
What was that like? And perhaps, what advice would you give for perhaps, say, a self-advocate with a disability who'd like to get involved in that type of work?
So I actually attended out in UCLA. They have leadership seminars for different diversity groups, and they had one for disabled people. So I was fortunate enough to go out and be a part of that. And this was a very exciting opportunity to have a leadership seminar that was really focused on persons with a disability, and it was an exciting week. And I had not been amongst disabled people in a while, because you sort of, you get one or two friends here and there, but in terms of talking about advocacy and the employment issues and things like that. So I came back from that, so very excited. And of course, the first thing my corporation wanted to do was, come over to our diversity group and help us there. And I said, no, I don't mean to insult you, but you're too small. I want to do something a lot bigger than that. I don't want to just influence my corporation, because I think I can do that just by being here and by participating. But I want to do something bigger than that, and that's where I had been, Betsy, who heads up the commission, from the county perspective, is our internal commission support person, had been trying to recruit me for quite some time. I had come and done a demo with my dog at one point, so I picked up the phone and called her and said, okay, you got me finally. And I joined the commission, and after some time on the commission, I really felt that that there were some improvements to be made in the commission and how we did. I felt like we really focused in on just a few issues. And some of the issues were issues that we couldn't solve, like Metro Access, which is something around this area, which is not run by the county government. So certainly there are issues, and it's important for us to provide that advice and advocacy through the county, but I wanted to make sure everybody was heard. So I wanted to bring my experience from being on the Rockville JCs, the Junior Chamber of Commerce, from being on the other organizations that I had been a part of within the city of Rockville, to bring that to the commission, to chair it, and to bring about some change. And I think that over the years, we've become now a force to be reckoned with in terms of really being heard, because we're seen as focusing on a broad range of issues. And, we were fortunate enough, Seth is here from the commission. He's the current chair, and he came on board and really fought for us to now have an advocacy role versus an advice role, which is a little bit different. So we can take, a stand. We can talk to all the way up now to the state capitol with permission from the county. So that's a huge change for us to be able to broaden our reach, if you will. So, this was an opportunity for me to help residents versus just a small population. So I think, that's how I got into it. And the networking and the ability to group work with people, to bring my experience and share that with others is very rewarding. And there's, I had somebody come up to me the other day and say I changed their life because I talked to them about my service dog. So if you can do that, I did nothing but say, that I love my service dog. But, those are the things that can happen.
Gotcha.
It's one person.
So Karen, something that I noticed you talked about and is, just what a problem generic resumes can be. And obviously, just one of the issues that a lot of people with disabilities face when they try to get into the workplace is they have to try and account for gaps in their employment history because, maybe they have a chronic illness and it got bad enough that they couldn't work for a couple months. And so I'm curious, what advice would you have for, say, a job seeker to address those types of gaps, or to really how to better connect their knowledge, skills, abilities, and personal experience to a given job? So.
I'm going to answer this in two different ways. The first, to address the question of gaps in employment. Within the county government, we've spent a lot of time training our hiring managers on appropriate interviewing techniques and guidelines and what to ask and what not to ask. And one of the areas that we've really encouraged our hiring managers to stay away from is gaps in employment history, because it can inadvertently lead to people sharing medical information, and we want to really have our interviews focused on the job and how people can contribute to the job that they're interviewing for. So hopefully within the county government, no one is addressing the gaps in someone's employment. And on the review of determining someone's eligibility for a particular position, we don't pay any attention to gaps because it's simply a matter of years of experience. Whether it took somebody 10 years to get 2 years of experience or 2 years to get 2 years of experience, they're still qualified. They're still minimally qualified. So in terms of addressing gaps, hopefully no one if they're interviewing for a job in the county is being asked that. I think it is a particular challenge on resumes, and often a functional resume can be more effective in addressing any gaps because you're really talking about the skills that you have, the knowledge that you have, the abilities that you have, as opposed to I worked for XYZ from 2001 to 2002. So I think a functional resume.
Okay, so I'm really curious. So the way I know that most resumes are structured is you have an objective, you have, I worked at this place, this was my title, this was the employer, this is the dates of my employment. So what would a functional resume look like instead? I'm curious.
Well, you would still have the dates of employment. Okay, so often when we see a functional resume, what we'll see is the dates of employment at the bottom, the name of the organization and the dates that they worked, but at the top might be more of a summary of skills and experience. And so we can really go and look at minimum quals and see if somebody has those skills, and then match it up with, do we see 5 years or 3 years or whatever that length of time is.
Gotcha.
And that's helpful when you've been in the workforce for a while, too. Each line of where you've worked gets longer and longer, so functional makes a lot more sense.
It can.
In many ways, but it can be a shortcoming.
It can be a shortcoming. Every organization has its own sort of idiosyncratic ways of how they look at resumes and what they want in a resume. And one person might say functional, another person could say, what is somebody hiding when they use a functional resume?
Yeah.
You really have to spell out how your experience lines up with what the job is that we're recruiting for.
Great. Operator, any phone questions or any chat questions that I'm not seeing?
No phone questions or chat questions.
Okay. Well, I believe we're out of time. Trish or Karen, do you have any final closing thoughts for our audience?
Nope. Just keep on trying to get overcome those barriers. That's all.
Well, I've certainly learned a lot today and a lot of great material to help celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And the theme this year is Inclusion Works. And we've gotten to see what inclusion looks like in a very localized example that's achieving some very, very impressive outcomes. Thank you both so much for being with us today. Thank you to JP Morgan Chase for helping us provide these webinars for free with closed captioning and accessible PowerPoint. I would invite all of our audience members to our next webinar, which is going to be Tuesday, October 18th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And we're going to be looking at a little bit of a different angle on the disability employment piece. We're going to be talking with Jill Crosser of the Iowa ABLE Foundation. And the Iowa ABLE Foundation is really focused around micro-enterprise, micro-lending, and financial security for people with disabilities in Iowa. They're really interesting. They've got some great partnerships with VR. They're just taking things, they're taking the whole challenge of disability employment from a very different angle, and I think it'll be really a bit different than what we usually do, and I think it'll be really interesting for all of you today. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Chase, for supporting our webinars, and that concludes today's webinar.